Thanks everyone for being here today. Right now I'll hand it off to Pastor Cabrera just to give us a few words of introduction for this event.
Thank you so much, Kate. I'm so excited about the Affordable Housing 101 guidance for the faith community and from the Mayor's Office of Faith-Based and Community Partnership. We want to give a special thanks to Bricks and Mortals, Enterprise Community Partners, Local Initiatives Support Corporation New York, and Partnership for Faith-Based Affordable Housing Community Development. I want to let everyone know you having the top experts on this field right here, right now. I wish when I'm a pastor of a church as well, I wish I had this level of access, knowledge when I was doing a joint venture for affordable housing in my church. You're about to have that. You can't make good decisions unless you have the right information. And so today, you're going to get the foundation, you're going to get the knowledge, the insight that you need. And so you can make informed decisions. And so you're in trusted hands. And I'm really excited about the top leadership uh, in this field because it's a niche field uh, that you're about to receive that level of impartation. Also, briefly, I want to give everyone, on behalf of the mayors here in New York, an invitation. As you know, Thursday is the National Day of Prayer, and so we're going to be at Christian Cultural Center. So for those interested, at 8:30 in the morning, we're going to be there. So everyone is welcome. So with that, Kate, give it back to you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Get ready for this next hour and a half to be filled with the Affordable Housing 101 principles that you need. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pastor Cabrera, for kicking us off, and to the Office of Faith-Based and Community Partnerships for sponsoring this event and supporting the Mayor's Working Group for Faith-Based Affordable Housing and Community Development. Yes, we can send this presentation an email too. Yasmin, if you could go to the next slide where we see the agenda, that would be great. I think you have to unpin Pastor Cabrera so that we can see it. All right, while we work on that, I will begin so we don't waste any time. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for Affordable Housing 101, Guidance for Faith Communities. We have a great group with us here today, so let's dive in. I am Kate Toth, the Executive Director of Bricks and Mortals and Chair of the Mayor's Working Group for Faith-Based Affordable Housing and Community Development. Bricks and Mortals is a secular interfaith membership organization. Our members are individuals and organizations from faith-based organizations and the real estate community. We empower faith-based organizations in New York City to maximize their buildings and property and to serve their communities by connecting congregations to experts and resources, including financial resources. We also advise elected officials and the public on faith-based organizations' needs and their contributions to their communities. Bricks and Mortals is also a member of the Partnership for Faith-Based Affordable Housing Community Development, which is represented here today, and you'll hear more about. But briefly, the partnership provides pre-development funding to houses of faith to develop affordable housing on their properties. Bricks and Mortals hosts bi-monthly membership meetings. Each meeting features a case study on the range of things that houses of faith can do with their properties and also resources. We offer trainings and events like this. All of this is guided by what we hear from our members. So we hope you'll join us and become a member of Bricks and Mortals. Visit our website if you want to become a member or find other resources, bricksandmortals.org. So let's just pause 1 second to see if Yasmin can, have you been able to figure out how to switch? Okay, we're just working to try to get, all right, we're resetting. but we'll go on. So this event came out of requests that we heard from this past December summit for faith-based affordable housing that was organized by the mayor's office and the working group and hosted at Trinity Church, Wall Street. During that event, we previewed the action plan that was developed by the working group that puts forward suggestions on how to make it easier for faith-based organizations to develop affordable housing in New York City. And that's forthcoming, so stay tuned. And many groups were also able to meet one-on-one with the organizations here today to have preliminary discussions about their properties. There was a huge response to that event, and one of
Kate, I believe you froze. I don't know if you can hear us.
Maybe we can ask Lisk to introduce themselves. I think we're.
sorry,
Are you there?
you know what? Things happen in this virtual world of ours. I don't know what just happened to my computer, but it was very, I guess, let's just say it was super excited about what I was saying. And so it decided to just restart right then. But like I was saying, there was a huge response to the event that we held in December. And one of the requests that came out of that was to provide more information on how faith properties can start to think about developing their property and nonprofits that they can partner with. And that's exactly what we're hoping to offer you today. So as we kick off, please put your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, or in the chat box so we can be sure to see them. We have a packed event, so we actually don't have a Q&A section, but our panelists will be sure to answer your questions along the way. And you can also join an organization's breakout room at the end. So thank you all for being here for this important topic, and we hope you find it really useful. Now let's look at who else is joining me today. So today we're joined by representatives from Bricks and Mortals, Enterprise Community Partners, Lisk, which is the Local Initiative Support Corporation of New York, the New York City Office of Faith-Based and Community Partnerships, and the Partnership for Faith-Based Affordable Housing and Community Development. You'll have the opportunity to hear from everyone a couple of times today, and at the end, you will be able to choose a breakout room to meet with one or more of the organizations. And we'll also be sending out a one-page summary from each organization on their process, what they offer, and how to contact them after this event. So if you register for this event, you'll be getting that. So next slide, please. So our goal today is to discuss guidelines, just to introduce you on how to develop affordable housing for your community and to connect with the nonprofit organizations that might be able to help you. Really, our goal is to begin this discussion and provide you with some really basic guidance and introduce you to those organizations that can help you through this process. All right, next slide, please. And right now we're going to be spending some time looking at and hearing from these organizations talk about some of the do's and don'ts when you're thinking about planning for affordable housing. Next slide, please. First up, the partnership is going to be talking about these three, and I'm going to introduce some members of the partnership right now, my colleagues in this. The first is Mark Greenberg, the Executive Director and co-founder of the Interfaith Assembly on Homelessness and Housing. Mark has been with the Assembly since its establishment in 1985 and has addressed homelessness through advocacy of public policy solutions and other strategies in partnership with a broad network of faith communities, advocates, housing and service providers, elected officials, and the directly impacted. Mark serves as the chair of the Interfaith Affordable Housing Collaborative. The Reverend Peter Cook is the executive director of the New York State Council of Churches, which represents 7,500 congregations across the state. Throughout his ministry, Peter has served as a strong advocate for the development of affordable housing, leading to the council's Who is My Neighbor community development initiative to help faith institutions use their property to better serve their communities. And he's the vice chair of the Interfaith Affordable Housing Collaborative. And finally, Rashida Tyler is the Deputy Executive Director of New York State Council of Churches and the Project Manager of the Interfaith Affordable Housing Collaborative. And she is a passionate advocate for social and economic justice, especially for women in low-income and disenfranchised communities. Rashida is the former Associate Executive Director of Community Outreach and Program Development for the YMCA of Kingston and Ulster County. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to you three with the reminder that you only have 10 minutes to discuss these three important issues.
Okay.
Okay, all right, this is Peter Cook, New York State Council of Churches. And, we're the partnership along with LISC and Enterprise, are one of three organizations that really specialize in what we call pre-development. And of course, Bricks and Mortals does as well, within the context of the partnership. So our first crack here is on terms of do's and don'ts, that the process of building affordable housing on faith-based property can take 3 to 5 years. So before you get started, it's really, really important that your church look at, or your faith community look at your mission and not let some other entity define that mission for you, like a developer, for instance, who might have a very different picture of what you want to do. And when you look at that mission, part of what you're going to do is to figure out early on whether or not you even want to build affordable housing on your site. And the answer often is no, which is a very honorable answer. And we can help you take a look at other options. But the thing I really want to stress here is how long it takes for this development to happen is based a lot on getting off to the right start by answering basic questions with an attorney and an architect and evaluating all of your options, not just some, and discerning whether or not your property is suitable for a viable project. Some congregations waste a lot of time and money on a project which could have been determined upfront as unsuitable. And they would have found that out if they had slowed down to answer basic questions about their mission and purpose, mission and property. Do not hastily move forward or contract with a developer until you are ready, which comes much later in the process. If you sign with a developer too soon, you could spend years renegotiating a development if there are parts of that agreement with which you are unhappy or which become a surprise to you after you sign. And please don't spend money until you need to. And Mark is going to share with us his advice about that as well. But it's just really important that you not expend money excessively until you're in the right part of the process. So, Mark?
Thank you, Peter. So good morning, everyone. So again, a little clarity is in order because we're all wearing various hats. As Kate said, I'm the director of the Interfaith Assembly on Homelessness and Housing, also the president of the Interfaith Affordable Housing Collaborative. And the collaborative, along with Bricks and Mortals and the New York State Council of Churches and the Interfaith Assembly, comprise the Partnership for Faith-Based Affordable Housing Community Development. And as Peter said, not every congregation is poised or even prepared or even appropriate for developing affordable housing. And what the partnership helps you to figure out is if that's an appropriate path for your congregation or not. But it's important to know that obviously this is maybe the most important decision a congregation can ever make. It's a generational decision. So it's important first to begin to get some clarity about what it is you want to do. Not only what programs and what space use you want, but how does your mission inform what you would like to do with your space? And that's the most important question to answer. And often, as we said, developer can come to your congregation and say, I see your roof is leaking. I've got $100,000, let's do something. That's not what you want to do. You want to be able to go to the developer and say, this is what we would like to do, and can you help us do this? And that takes some time. It takes some soul searching. It takes some communication within your congregation and a determination if you have the capacity to do what it is you want to do. But that's the most important place to start. And as we said, that will always save time in the long run, because then you're the master of your own fate. And you're not letting a developer tell you what it is they want to do with you. Because once the process starts, it's very hard to reverse it. And we know of many stories where developers took the congregation in a place they didn't want to go, and the congregation had no options going forward to change their future. And in some cases, developers were not even in a position to follow through with what they suggested, and the congregation is in ruins. And there are more than one terrible stories where this has happened. So my point primarily is to say the congregation needs to understand what it wants to do, and that can take time. But once you do that, then you seek out one of the partners here or others to help you figure out how that can be accomplished. And then I'll turn it over to Rashida.
Thank you so much, Mark and Peter. So I think a lot has been said about the partnership. I think one of the most important parts are, things to remember is that we really want to see churches, regardless of what group you go with, to be in the driver's seat, to drive their own development, and to be really have the determination to help their communities and be the ones to make that decision based on their mission and based on their vision. And so speaking of vision, when you're planning and you're really starting to wonder what to do with either land that your church owns or to repurpose your church's space, you're not only going to want to think in the near term, but also in the future, as much as up to 10 years in the future. You're going to want to think about what leadership at your church or your faith-based organization will look like. Will the same leaders be in place? Will the same people who are on your boards, will they be in place? If not, you need to make sure that you do have, planning on your board to make sure that there's a continuation of the people who are in the planning process, and that everybody is knowledgeable about what is happening. You really want to make sure that you have clear documentation and that there's a trail, so that others who step into that role or into those capacities are able to follow what has been happening up until that date. So these are a lot of our basic meeting notes, but beyond that, making sure people are informed and understand the context and the vision that you're trying to go for. And you want to be clear about your decision-making process, about the judiciary. If you have a body that you have to go to, this is really something that might take place in the early part. As Peter was saying, when you're really making the decision to develop, you want to be clear that you have the power to develop, and that you know all of the permissions that you have to receive from your judiciary bodies, and that those, again, on your board and who are involved in this process know about those as well. So communication is really key here. Communication with those, such as your diocese or other body, and then also the congregation members and those on your board. And you want to be clear with your community as well. I think it's important when you're planning and you're trying to find a use for your space that you're in touch with the community and you understand that the space that you're going to be building will be something the community will need, not just today, but also in the future. So this fits into how your space will be used and how it will change over time. So if you want to say create a ghost kitchen, or flex kitchen, that might be something that's needed now, but will that be the trend or necessary in 10 years? So in planning, you want to make sure that your space is as flexible as possible. If you're planning to build housing, that housing serves the needs of the community. If you tend to live in an area that has a larger number of families, you may want to plan for units that would be larger, not necessarily studio apartments, and vice versa. And so also, this is usually conveyed or thought of during the planning stages, but it's something to really put into your strategic planning, your long-term strategic planning as well. And then also to look at the financing that you're using. So if you're using the low-income tax credits, you want to make sure you understand the financial structuring of those, and how they may change over time. And so in that, your long-term strategic plan, you're going to want to look at how you're going to sustain your faith-based organization financially and spiritually over the long term. And I think as I wrap up, I'm going to reiterate something that was said by Mark and Peter, which is really don't sign any documents without council review. Don't sign with the developer before you have those documents reviewed, and you're examining the terms, the details, the rates, the conditions. Those are things that can resurface over time, and they may look good in the first part, but over time, in the long term, may not turn out to your congregation's advantage. So those are all of the advantages of working with a experienced pre-development partner early on. They can help you really forecast and look at what might come up in the future, particularly around financing and documents and things like that. So with that, thanks so much. I'm going to turn it over to Kate.
All right, thank you so much, Mark, Peter, and Rashida from the partnership. And I included the website at the bottom of this, but like I said, we'll also be sending out one-pagers from each of these organizations. So next slide, please. So we'll be hearing from, oops, there you go, from Enterprise Community Partners. And this is Victoria Barreca is the Director of Capital Solutions and Partnerships, which helps address complex social issues through developing scalable capital solutions to support core program areas, including vulnerable populations, green initiatives, preservation, and public housing. Victoria collaborates with public, private, and nonprofit stakeholders to design, pilot, and scale social impact investments. Previously, Ms. Barreca was a senior loan officer for Enterprise Community Loan Fund, underwriting and closing various types of bridge loans, primarily in the New York market. Prior to joining Enterprise in 2006, she served as the Deputy Director and Project Manager under HPD's Division of Alternative Management. And Betty Fong is the Program Officer on the Capital Solutions team, where she manages technical assistance to faith-based organizations, consultant contracts and workflow, trainings and tools, and other resources in the Faith-Based Development Initiative in New York. Prior to joining Enterprise in 2021, there you go, she was Community Preservation Coordinator at St. Nick's Alliance, a North Brooklyn Community Development Corporation with faith-based roots. And I'll hand it over to both of you.
Thanks, Kate. And that was a mouthful, a reminder to me to maybe shorten the bio a bit. But nevertheless, thanks for having us today and excited to speak. I will kind of caveat what I'm about to say. I think underscores and overlaps a bit with some of what you've already heard. And I think that our goal here is to give you some high level advice, do's and don'ts, and certainly there's much more that we can cover in the breakout groups and offline. So just talking a bit about the do's of working with mission-driven organizations. It's really kind of critical in this space to consider who you're working with, how they align with your values, how they align with how you want to serve the community, and who they are. So in this context, we're talking about mission-driven organizations that serve low-income and underserved communities and people. There are different types of mission-driven organizations. There are nonprofit organizations. There are CDFIs, which is shorthand for community development financial institutions, and there are mission-based developers. All of these groups have distinct and complementary roles in this space. It's important to have an understanding of their functions and their roles, and each of these functions should support your work and your goal in driving a solution that makes sense for your organization. Again, the services offered are comprehensive and unique, so I suggest you do a thorough review before you commit to working with any one organization and before certainly signing any agreements. So thinking a bit more about the who's, the nonprofit organizations that we're talking about in this context are organizations who can provide the early pre-development support for you. They can help you access a team of professionals who have experience and specialize in affordable housing, as well as mixed-use housing. And mixed-use housing can mean something like affordable or mixed-income housing on certain floors of a development, and a ground floor or lower floors that serve the community in some way, either through sanctuary space and a house of worship, through nonprofit community services spaces, or even perhaps through some retail spaces that are needed in the community. In addition to providing the specialization and the expertise through a team of professionals, it's important that you get to a place where you're ultimately collecting unbiased information from these groups so that you can do a site feasibility assessment and ultimately make what we call a go, no-go decision. And that will help you in terms of understanding the risks and opportunities for a potential development or different development options, and evaluating those options that are in the best interest of you, the faith organization, and your congregation. So that's a bit of how the nonprofit organizations can help you. And I think as Kate mentioned, there are several of us on this call that provide those types of services, and we'll get into later. A CDFI, again, short for Community Development Financial Institution, another mouthful. Those are groups that are, again, mission-oriented. Their mission is to often serve and provide capital to low-income and underserved communities. They provide different types of capital and different types of loan products, meaning they can provide loans for the earliest stages of development called pre-development and the construction of a site. They may even provide bridge loans or mini permanent loans. It's not so important to get caught up in the what, but the what you need, and then figuring out where they might be able to support that. They provide financing, again, for the creation of affordable housing or the preservation of affordable housing. They can also provide capital for community facilities, which again can mean that mixed use or standalone facility for a nonprofit space, or some sort of space that again serves the community with a mission. CDFIs typically advance economic, social, and racial justice. And another distinction is that provide creative capital solutions. They are typically more flexible than conventional banks. They typically may structure things and design products in a way that conventional banks may not have the ability to do so. CDFIs are often more patient than conventional banks in situations or circumstances where perhaps things are taking longer than initially expected, the repayment plan wasn't achieved on the time horizon that was anticipated, and CDFIs may be willing to work with their borrowers to modify and restructure the loans to allow more time to achieve those important milestones. In addition, something else that sets CDFIs apart from typical banks are their abilities to provide technical assistance. And again, this can come at a stage before a loan application. So CDFIs are often able to talk to borrowers before they put in a full loan application to understand where they are in their process, to understand what might be missing, what else they might need to do, to give some advice or considerations to those potential borrowers in terms of where else they might be able to turn for resources. They might have a familiarity with areas like green and enhancements of a project through green that are low cost and high impact that will benefit the project and ultimately the residents and the property owners. And again, I think this willingness to talk about what can be done and where an organization is at an earlier stage is important. Finally, and as you're talking to CDFIs or any lenders, one word of caution is do not commit to any financial obligations until you are ready, until you have a viable project that meets your mission, and until you've identified a development partner. CDFIs have an underwriting process that they adhere to. So as you're talking to CDFIs, ask them about their underwriting process, ask them about their loan products and terms, ask them about the types of due diligence that they look for in underwriting a loan, ask them about their timeline in reviewing loan requests, their timeline to issue a term sheet, and ultimately provide a loan commitment. Those are things that will help you kind of think about the when and how to engage CDFIs over time. And finally, again, before selecting a CDFI, I suggest that you compare term sheets from different lenders. That way you can understand what kind of terms they offer, compare those terms before making a final selection and taking out a loan commitment. Thirdly, just want to cover the last arm of the mission-driven organizations here, which again is the developer. The developer oversees the development of the project. They should ensure that the project is well designed and that design is adhering to your vision. They should be responsible typically to source the capital that's needed to build the project from the kind of core pre-development work and covering higher cost items like architectural design and engineering, to financing application fees, to legal fees, to potentially rezoning costs. In addition to that, developers need to source the construction funds and the permanent sources for the project to be viable. They often are expected to provide those guarantees to lenders and investors and ultimately oversee the construction and the development team during construction to ensure that the project is on time and within budget. A developer, again, should be mission driven, but they can be either for-profit or nonprofit. What's important is that they share your vision, they share your values, and they can get it done. When looking to developers, consider how they've worked in your community. Do they have experience in what you're looking to build? Have they worked with other partnerships before? Do they have a strong reputation? Have they worked on something in the size and the complexity that you're envisioning? Do they have the staff to do something that you're looking to do in terms of their capacity, or are they overstretched at this point in time in terms of working on many other projects? And do they have the balance sheet strength to stand behind the guarantees that are necessary? We suggest that you review multiple proposals from developers. As Peter and Mark and Rashida were sharing, it's important to shift the power. You're seeking the proposals, you're evaluating those proposals, and you do that when you're ready to do that. Don't get ahead of that step. It's important to have your vision and your site analysis in place and your congregation on board before you seek proposals from those developers. And again, when you are finally seeking those proposals, evaluate who from your organization will be involved, whether you create a team or a committee. Consider how you're going to review the proposals so it's done in a fair and consistent way, in a systematic way, and consider bringing in consultants and experts from, again, the affordable housing space. This could be legal counsel and a development consultant who can help you evaluate those proposals, who can help you identify gaps in information and suggest follow-up questions from those proposals before your organization makes a final decision. So there are a number of organizations who are involved in this space. I think LISC, Enterprise, and Interfaith are all well positioned to provide more information in terms of the who, and we'll be happy to talk to you about that later on as a follow-up. So with that, I'm ready to hand it back to Kate.
All right, great. Thank you so much for all that information. And I see that Betty included some more information in the chat, kind of recapping. If anyone has any questions with anything that Victoria just went through or the partnership, or as we move into LISC, again, just feel free to put those questions right in the chat, and we'll go through those as we move through these presentations. So with the next slide, we'll be handing it over to Liz to look at some don'ts now. So we'll be hearing from Monica Dean, who is the Director of Housing Programs at LISC. Monica is responsible for developing, implementing, and managing LISC New York's housing programs to build capacity and expand opportunities for underrepresented firms owned by people of color or nonprofit mission-based institutions in the real estate industry across the state of New York. She is also working to create and preserve home ownership opportunities for BIPOC residents of New York City. Prior to joining LISC New York in October 2021, Monica served as Senior Vice President of Resident Services for Opportunity Communities in Boston, Massachusetts, where she was responsible for creating and implementing programs for a portfolio of over 1,300 low-income families. Christine O'Connell is the Director of Community Development Investments at LISC. Christine directly supports program partners in financing community development opportunities. She also provides support to the lending team in its transactional work through her involvement in the origination and underwriting of loans. Christine has over 10 years experience in housing finance, community development, and public affairs. Prior to rejoining LISC, Christine has held multiple roles in New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, HPD, including Director and Deputy Director of the Affordable Neighborhood Cooperative Program and Project Manager for the Participation Loan Program. So with that, I'll hand it over to Monica and Christine to discuss some don'ts in the area of developing your property.
Great, thank you. So as Kate mentioned, I'm Christine O'Connell, Director of Community Development Investments at LISC. I'm on the lending team. I just want to point out that these don'ts, which are don't take hard money and don't sign any docs without council review, they have been addressed both directly and indirectly in our previous dues section. That's how important they are. So in terms of don't take hard money, typically a faith-based organization, sorry, there's some background noise.
Tell me that.
Typically a faith-based organization that is seeking an opportunity to redevelop the site, maybe looking to, you know, maximize income for the community portion or the church, or they may be looking to upscale or better utilize the land that they currently own. And so there's a lot of costs associated with taking on that kind of initiative. And it's been mentioned before that, you know, all the way from pre-development until actually closing on a construction loan to do the work, it can be quite costly. It's important that with a project where it's an unknown of the time horizon, it could take 3 to 4 years to get through a pre-development process, assembling your team, determining the type of project, scoping the land and understanding what can be built. And so it's really important that the type of money that you take out during a pre-development period best supports the organization in terms of having a favorable interest rate, not a really high rate, something that's favorable to the project and over the course of maybe a 3-year period, as well as having a fixed rate. I would say for a pre-development period, it's probably very important to have a fixed rate loan versus a floating rate loan. Especially we've learned in this last couple of years that the rates can really change, and a fixed rate loan gives you better control over the costs of the project and helps you get to a successful construction loan closing. So again, as Victoria from Enterprise pointed out, I think working with CDFIs, community development finance institutions, is a really great place to start to understand what kind of products what kind of products best support the project. And then just going back to point number 2, don't sign any docs without council review. You know, Monica can speak a little bit more to this, but LISC has managed the New York Land Opportunity Program, or NILOP, since 2016. So we've worked with a number of faith-based organizations that have entered this process of evaluating their asset, determining what they want to do long term, you know, potentially having some affordable housing on the site, potentially having some maybe commercial or additional community space. And so the process does really start by assembling your team and making sure that your team understands your goals, but is also supporting your goals. And if you're working, you know, if there's a development agreement, or if there's even, you know, a property transfer agreement, something like that, you definitely need to have council review. And I think I saw in the comments, there was a recommendation to have the faith-based organization have their own council, in addition to allowing maybe another partner like a developer, bring in their counsel, right? So having an attorney that you really trust, that maybe you've done business with before, or maybe you have other organizations in the community and you know that they've done business with them. So sort of vetting your attorney is very important, and making sure that the documents represent both interests fairly is a huge step in entering this type of process. Monica, is there anything that you want to add?
No, I mean, I would just reiterate what Christina said, especially for item number 2. You know, that's so important that organizations have their own counsel. It's one of the key components of LISC New York's NILOP program. That's the New York Land Opportunity Program. As part of that program and the technical assistance that we provide, it includes legal. And so every document needs to be reviewed. I've heard so many horrible stories from faith-based groups who, you know, are supporting their mission. They wanted, you know, do affordable housing. It's a huge need for that community. And so they went into these projects with their mission in mind. But when the deal was done, they end up not, you know, owning any percent of the property, never collecting a developer's fee, and they just like, they don't know what happened. But it's, you know, it's too late oftentimes, and it's unfortunate that this is the reality of a lot of organizations who just don't know, like, you know, the saying, you don't know what you don't know. And one of the things that's important to stress is the importance of having counsel to review documents, to even participate in negotiations and be part of conversations throughout the entire process. Is very helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I just wanted to say that it's really interesting hearing all 3 organizations talk about their specific points and how much overlap there is between them all, as I think you all have mentioned in your different sections. And one of the things that keeps coming up is having your own professionals that are working for you, and just to plug Bricks and Mortals again, to say that that's one of the benefits of becoming a member, is that we're able to provide a list of folks who might be able to help you, you know, do these transactions or anything other kind of transaction you might want to do with your property, because they are our members who have gone through a process. So if you're interested, again, you know, go to our website and check that out. But so for the next section, we'll hear more about the individual processes for how each of these organizations work and how best to prepare for engagement with them and what they specifically can offer you. Obviously, it sounds like we're on the same page in terms of the best way to the do's and don'ts of developing affordable housing, but the nuances of engaging with us might be a little bit different. And at the end of the day, you have to choose one organization to pursue this path with. Of course, you can talk to all of us at the offset. So let's hear from each of them with just a quick 10-minute hit. And again, this will be followed up by a one-page summary for everyone to see with contact information. So let's start with Enterprise on your process, how to best prepare for engagement, and what services you offer through that.
Great, thanks so much, Kate. Good morning, everyone. My name is Betty Fong. I am a program officer at Enterprise, and I manage the day-to-day with our faith-based development initiative work. So we've all heard over the past 30 minutes how important it is to work with organizations and people that you trust who are mission-based, for them to help you figure out your development vision, and then see if there's a developer partner that can help you realize your vision. Related to all of that, the work that we do within Enterprise and our FBDI is to support faith organizations in developing their vision. The resources, the support we provide to do that can really be broken down into 4 different types of resources. One being technical assistance that we provide one-on-one with each faith-based organization, with a development consultant, with a legal consultant who have worked in affordable housing before, who are on the side of the faith-based organization and have the faith organization's best interests in mind. With these consultants, we'll look at different site analyses, different property reports, including zoning, appraisal, financing, so your faith organization can better understand what's possible with your property, what's feasible. A second resource we provide is a training series that all of the faith organizations within our cohort, which is right now 9 faith orgs, will partake in to learn more about the affordable housing development process. A third resource is that peer cohort of other faith organizations that are going through what you all might be thinking of. What do I do with my property? How do I realize my vision? What are some challenges along the way? What are some examples of successful faith-based development? So a peer cohort of other folks who have the same questions, perhaps can share their experience and their answers. And the fourth resource I'll highlight is the pre-development grants that Enterprise can provide to faith-based organizations in our cohort that we've worked with for a long while. These grants are usually provided to faith-based organizations that have fleshed out their development vision, are getting ready to release a request for proposal. So they're getting ready to share their development vision with their potential developer partner. And now they're thinking about, oh, what support do I need beyond selecting the developer partner? Do I need somebody to help me manage my relationship with my developer partner? Do I need legal counsel for longer who's going to represent me in that development partnership? So these are some potential uses for the pre-development grant that Enterprise provides. And I'll also note that all of these resources are provided pro bono by Enterprise through our fundraising. So we cover the costs of the services that I mentioned. Enterprise is not seeking to develop or earn profits from the support that we provide to faith-based organizations. All of the services I mentioned are free to the faith-based organizations. We only ask for faith organizations who work with us to commit their time to this journey. We heard from groups before that even early pre-development can take 3 to 4 years. Rashida talked about how the entire development process, you want to look at how your organization 10 years from the beginning of the development journey, where you'll be in 10 years. So this process does take a long time. All right, and then now let me summarize what exactly is the process for faith-based organizations to begin working with Enterprise. There's 4 main steps that I'll touch on. One, the faith organization will first complete a organizational assessment and meet with our FBDI team. So that's me, that's Tori that you see on the call now. In the organizational assessment and in meeting you, we want to get an idea of, one, do you own your property? Who's the leadership in your organization? Who's going to be navigating this development journey with you on behalf of your faith-based organization? Can that team commit the time that's necessary for this development process? And after looking a bit at the property, at the site, does the project look possible in terms of the scale, the design, how viable the financing and affordable housing programs are? Have you already entered into any sort of developer agreements? Or are you clearly in that stage of early pre-development where you haven't signed anything yet? You still first want to understand what your development vision is. All right, now I'll talk about step 2. After we have a conversation with your faith organization, complete that assessment. If it makes sense then for your faith organization to join FBDI and to join the peer cohort, we'll sign a resources agreement between Enterprise and your organization that outlines the services that we'll be providing and the types of commitments you'll be making to FBDI. So that'll include the time that I had mentioned, the leadership, the review of the analyses that we'll be ordering on behalf of your organization. And the third step after that agreement is signed is for your organization to formally join our FBDI peer cohort and begin accessing some of the support and resources I talked about. So that's meeting with the development consultant, looking at the site analyses, zoning, financing, title, appraisal. That's joining the trainings that we have coming up for the peer cohort. And at a later stage, that's meeting with our legal counsel and applying for a pre-development grant with Enterprise. The fourth step I'll note is if it's the case where the faith organization, it actually doesn't make sense yet for you to get involved with FBDI, or that the faith organization doesn't have a site that's valuable for an affordable housing program, we'll definitely keep you in mind as we're having conversations with the city, with our partners in faith-based development to see what types of projects, what types of programs would be possible for your faith site later on. We'll be adding you to our contact list, sharing information, sharing other grant opportunities and policy updates. So we will really make sure that we don't leave you hanging and that there's some information that can be helpful to you as you navigate this really big and complex process of faith-based development. I'll recap some of what I said in chat. Thanks, everyone. I'll pass it back to Kate.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That was a super helpful summary of different components. So at this point, I'll pass it to Lisk for a summary of how to engage with them.
Sure. So good morning again, everyone. So I am briefly going to talk about LISC New York's New York Land Opportunity Program, and briefly just highlight some of LISC New York's lending products and services. And so the New York Land Opportunity Program, which I refer to as NYLOP, was a program designed especially to support mission-driven organizations and faith-based institutions who are interested in using their real estate to develop affordable housing for New York City residents. So the program actually started out as a New York City-based program, but I'm happy to share that this year we launched a statewide NYLOP program. And so the vision for this program, again, and its goals is for, faith-based organizations to really use their property to develop affordable housing. And so for my 2022 NYLOP cohort, we have a goal to develop at least 100 in affordable housing units collectively. So let me just briefly share the components of the program. So we do provide faith-based organizations.
Expert process or the slide.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So I was talking about the program components. So again, we provide technical assistance to the faith-based organizations through our team of technical experts. And as I briefly mentioned earlier, as part of the do's and don'ts, our team of experts include a development consultant, architects, and legal. And so we provide one-on-one technical assistance support to the organizations to create a development and a project, that includes buy-in from the organizations in which we work with. And so the attorneys that we work with really help the organizations, help to ensure them that they understand the different types of partnerships that they may form, joint ventures, including their developer that they end up select. And so the requirements to participate in our NILOP program is three very simple basic minimum qualifications to be considered in the program. And again, this program is free. All of the technical assistance that we provide from the experts is included as a part of the program. In addition, we do pay for some of the pre-development cost. And so in order to be considered into List New York's NILOP program, the organization has to be incorporated as a nonprofit corporation. Number two, they absolutely have to have ownership or long-term leasehold for the vacant or the underutilized property that they identified that's suitable for housing. And the third, we talked about this again as part of the do's and don'ts. The third requirement is that they have to have a track record of providing mission-based services to their community. And so how this process works, so we put out, List New York, we put out what we call a RFEI, a request for expression of interest, which is an application. Organizations who are interested in applying to the program will have to complete the application. And again, we check to ensure that they meet the program requirements. My team and I at List New York with the consultants, we review the applications and we select a cohort that we think, is most aligned with the program's components that meet the requirements, but those who are best suited in order to move forward with a project to develop. And so organizations who may have already begun their process, let's say they've already selected a developer, they already have, their conceptual drawings, they wouldn't be a good candidate for our program because we are looking to work with those organizations in need of the technical assistance, including at the very beginning, conducting assessments of the property that they are proposing, making sure that their leadership has the capacity and they are committed to this process. And I know one of my colleagues earlier mentioned as part of their process that this is very important, and it's very important for our NILOP program because it definitely takes and requires some deep commitments from the organizations of the leadership, which can be very challenging. And so that means they have to be committed to meetings, we conduct site visits, but just really be involved and engage with every step of the process from the very beginning until we assist them with selecting a co-developer and other joint ventures that may be necessary to support their project. And so I'm happy to report that the 2022 cohort for our NILOP They are well underway and moving forward with their projects. We just completed a process where we are selecting a co-developers with their buy-in. So we put out an RFP on behalf of the faith-based organizations. We went through a very intense interviewing process for all of the developers who responded to the RFP. And, right now we are in the process of moving forward with the due diligence with the co-developers and partners. And so the 2022 cohort included faith-based organizations from Harlem, Bronx, and Queens. For 2023, I recently launched another RFEI for the 2023 cohort, which is made up of a statewide cohort. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we were super duper excited that we were able to launch and have the capacity to accept faith-based organizations from across the state. And we are in the process right now of selecting the 2023 NILOP cohort. We may put out another RFEI sometime in the early fall for another statewide cohort. But that's, where we are right now. And so we, do conceptual plans, we go through the whole due diligence review, we help them develop organizational structures, put out RFPs for master developers and also for architects. And those are some of the services that are included as part of the program at NILOP. And so that's just a very brief overview about the program, much of what it entails and how we select program participants. And so Christine, who you briefly met earlier, she is the director of community capital investments. And so LIST New York, we are a CDFI. We have offices across the country. We have 40 offices across the country. And so a lot of them offer and provide very similar services. But again, the services that the LISC offices provide are really geared towards the needs of their local market. So there's a LISC Boston, there's a LISC Charlotte, there's a LISC in Atlanta. We have offices in Florida, in California. So just go to our website, list.org, and you can identify an office, hopefully in a location near you, if there are many people on this call who are outside of New York. But the housing programs and investment teams, the loan products that we provide are very similar to some of our other partners on this call. We do pre-development, acquisition, construction, mini permanent, bridge, and line of credit loans. And the projects that we support are community facilities, mixed-use development, commercial, industrial spaces, economic development, charter schools, and affordable housing. And that includes rental and home ownership. And so I'll stop there because I definitely want to leave time for questions. So I hope this was helpful. I'll turn it back over to you, Kate.
Yeah, thank you so much. So just to pull one point out, which is that it sounds like, and you'll hear from the partnership this as well, that enterprise and the partnerships process is rolling, and list process more has specific deadlines that they announce. But again, those will be listed, that information will be listed on their overviews. So at this point, I'll turn it over to the partnership for their 10 minutes. And since we're running a little bit behind, I'll just flag to everyone that I want to get you guys out of here on time at 11:30. So instead of doing breakout rooms, which take a little time to sort into, let's all stay together in the same room, and let's just put all our questions to the individual organizations at one time so we can get as much time as possible. So we'll do 10 minutes for the partnership now, and then spend the last 10 minutes doing Q&A all as a group. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Kate. It was really nice to hear Enterprise and LISC describe their process. I think the thing that I would say about the partnership is we're kind of students of the pre-development process. We know we learn every day about traps and problems with pre-development processes, and then we try to perfect them and make this as easy as possible for our congregations to participate. So basically, we have a 6-phase process. We don't allow churches to go from one phase to the next until they hit certain milestones. There's a phase 1, which I'm going to talk about, which is really pre-development. Number 2, assembling a pre-development team, putting together, doing due diligence on a property. 3 and 4 issuing an RFP or RFQ, 5 negotiating a development agreement, and 6 implementing the development agreement. So Rashida, why don't you just say briefly how we start, and then I'll go into that.
Sure. So one of the ways that you would get started in the pre-development program is by reaching out to me. Hi, hello. I'll set up an appointment and we'll go over a one-on-one, really cover, what you are looking to do. If you've taken any steps before to develop your property, I'll gather basic information and explain to you more about our program. And then I'll look to our partnership and decide who to pull in the next step. So the next meeting would likely be a meeting with Mark, Kate, or Peter, myself, and an attorney to really review and go over, zoning and any other types of things that a lawyer might want to red flag before we pull in an architect, which would be in our next meeting. And that architect is really important because sometimes you may want to build so high, but zoning doesn't say you can do that. However, you may be able to accomplish that by building outwards, and you may be able to really have better use of the space and land. And so pulling an architect and an attorney really early in the process is very important. And that comes at no cost to the faith-based organizations. So I think if anything, listening to all 3 of our organizations that you should gather is you should not be expending money for this knowledge when the resources are there for you to start and gain this knowledge in these conversations early on. We want to see faith-based organizations do their best and not be taken advantage of. So that really is how the process would get started with the partnership. And then one of the main things is that we ask everyone who applies to go through an 8-question process step. We look for 8 questions. So Peter, did you want to go into those 8 questions before we proceed? Okay.
So basically, we have 8 questions that we go through, and we ask these questions in course of 3-4 meetings. The last meeting being sure that we have a sign off from an attorney and an architect. And these are questions which have to be answered to the satisfaction of the partnership before we would invite you to make an application for pre-development funds. And Mark will talk about that in a minute. But these questions are, what's your congregation's mission and how does the mission comport with the realistic options for your property? So if your mission is to, serve the homeless and, and do a food kitchen, but your property you don't even own, or it's on the size of a postage stamp, then, you have to kind of reevaluate your mission. And then secondly, we'll want to know if your congregation signed any agreements with a developer which explicitly or implicitly commits your congregation to work with that developer. If you've signed stuff, we could advise you on maybe how to navigate that, but you're probably not a very good candidate for a pre-development application. Then in consulting with an attorney and an architect, does it look like the building or property has the capacity to develop affordable housing? And are there other non-affordable housing options that would be better suited for your congregation? So at this point, we really want you to look at all of your options and weigh the costs and risks of those options. And we want to see that you've been willing to look at that process. If affordable housing seems viable on your property, is there a realistic chance that it could be financed by some sort of affordable housing financing scheme? Not all affordable housing can be viably financed. It might need to be a certain size. There's certain requirements down the line, for funding. So we can help you kind of get a preview of that ahead of time. Have potential options been shared with your governing board and pastor? And are the pastor and governing board in agreement about the information insurance, furnished to them? Is there leadership in your congregation and adjudicatory, if required, which can sustain a long-term project and who can work collaboratively and transparently with the pre-development team and your congregation's decision-making bodies? So if, we have a pastor who's like, this is going to be their vanity project and they really don't take advice well from somebody else, or they're not really talking to their congregation or adjudicatory, that's a problem, but we can kind of help them take a look at that. And does your congregation have the capacity to sustain itself over a long period of time? Are there financial pressures which require you to sell your property or do other kinds of things that might preclude you from doing development? And then finally, does your congregation understand the 6-phase development process, which we outline in our website, iahcny.org? So if all those questions are answered satisfactorily for free, and we do this for free, then the partnership will decide whether or not to invite you to make an application for pre-development money. And Mark?
Thank you, Peter. And also, I just want to start by saying we really appreciate the support and the sponsorship of the Mayor's Center for Faith-Based Affordable Housing, Mayor's Center for Faith-Based and Community Partnerships. And we also really appreciate working with our colleagues at Enterprise and LISC. And let me just say that our objective, I think I can say for all of us, is to expand the number of congregations interested in pursuing the possibility of developing affordable housing in New York City and New York State, because we're all really trying to address the critical need for affordable housing, and the faith community can be a crucial part of that. And that's really why we're here. And I want to thank Kate as well as Pastor Monrose for helping to sponsor this conversation, which started at City Hall about a year ago and has now moved to this phase. But again, we all have different approaches, but I think it's important for everyone here to realize that we're really all working together to see to it that we address the need for affordable housing in New York City. I also want to reiterate one point that we all made, but it's really crucial to keep in mind that, at least from the partnership's perspective, you are our client and our secondary client are the people of New York. But it is important that the congregation is represented by an attorney. This is, from our perspective, crucial. We were at a workshop a number of years ago where a very respectable developer was on the podium and he said, you need an attorney to protect you against me. It's not because he's trying to do something wrong. It's because the developer has a particular perspective and a set of objectives, and you do. And those objectives need to be represented by an attorney, not by the developer's attorney. So that's really important. But as Peter said, what we want to do is help you determine initially if you can move forward. And again, Bricks and Mortals as part of the partnership will help take a look at if you want to develop affordable housing, but that's not in the cards, what are the other uses for your property that would be appropriate? That's a big part of what Bricks and Mortals does, alternative uses for property to maximize your resources. But if it is determined that you answer those 8 questions appropriately, that your mission is clear, that the space has the capacity to do development of affordable housing, we will then offer you the opportunity to present to us to apply for a pre-development forgivable loan. And the way we work is we ask you if you'd like to apply for a $30,000 forgivable loan. And to do that, we invite you to consider selecting a pre-development coordinator who would be generally an attorney or an architect. And we can suggest some that we found have the qualifications, or you can find someone that you feel is qualified, and we will then vet them. And that pre-development coordinator will put together a proposal to come up with an RFP or an RFQ. In other words, to map out what it is your congregation wants to do that you will then market to developers to say, is this something that you can help us do? Can you meet our qualifications? Can you do what it is we have committed to do? Can you match our needs? And let me say, I was pleased to hear, and we've been working with Enterprise since the beginning of our process, pleased to hear that Enterprise might be in a position at that point when the congregation is clear and has gotten our pre-development loan, the partnership might be then at that point the right agency to go to and say, look, we know what we want to do. Can you help us to find the developer, to develop that development agreement, be sure that that protects our interests and really creates what it is we want to do. So again, I think we're all different agencies, but we're all working for the same purpose. And I think I would invite you to take a look at who can do what for you at what stage of your process. The bottom line is we need more housing for people who are in need of affordable housing. And this process should help us get to that point more effectively, and be sure that the congregation uses its resources wisely and doesn't make poor decisions. Because again, you have generally one property, you have one shot. We suggest that you take your time and are very considerate and deliberate, and then see how either of us can help you move forward to serve your mission, to serve your community. Thank you.
I'm going to add one thing briefly that wasn't mentioned, which is our bullpen. And this is the number of professionals that we work with who are attorneys, architects, and so on and so forth, who provide their professional services, both pro bono, and will work with you if you select them as a pre-development advisor. The bullpen's vetted. And so we make sure that there are no conflicts of interest or self-dealing. Really, we want to make sure that the organizations that we link up with the bullpen, that you're receiving the best possible services, and have people who have done this and are experienced.
All right, thank you so much for that summary. And so we just have a couple of minutes left. So I just wanted to, if you haven't already, please respond to the poll. It's mostly about, should we get in touch with you? And which of these organizations, if any specifically, you want to be get in touch with so they can get in touch with you. Please just take 1 minute to respond to that super quick poll. So we just have 4 minutes. Are there any questions that we haven't covered here that you want, or that we haven't covered in the chat that you want to raise. I guess feel free to put in the chat or raise your hands. All right. Oh, I see one. Mr. Johnson Jr.
Yes, how are you today?
Good. How you doing?
All right, I'm doing well. So I'm actually in Killeen, Texas. I heard about this through a friend and definitely would like to get more information. I did look at, I believe it was lists, and there are two locations, one in San Antonio, which is about 2.5 hours away, and Houston, which is 3 hours away. I am a pastor, but also chair of the Rich Island Community Development Corporation, and we have several properties. We are buying houses and renting them, but we actually like to start building houses. We also have a feeding program. We're feeding or giving away between 35 and 40,000 meals a month, but we have no more space. But we also sit on 10 acres of land. So we actually have a property to do what's necessary. So basically, I'm asking for help.
Yeah, so I would say I'll start off with a very brief opinion of mine, then pass it along to each of the groups for 30 seconds. So I would say, you know, the calculus of how each of these pencils out for a market like New York versus a market where you actually have lands in a more rural area is super different. But it looks like all of those organizations work in all in areas outside New York City. So I would just ask, I'll go through each of the organizations, and if one person can take like 30 seconds each to address it, we can go through it that way and give this man advice, and he can follow up with whoever he would like after. So let's go with LISC first, then Enterprise, and then the partnership.
No, I think, I mean, you've already done like the first part of the due diligence and homework. And that is to, you know, reach out to one of our local offices in Texas. And I am more than happy, you know, to facilitate you know, an introduction, just to get a better idea and understanding, one, of their capacity and the types of programs that they offer in Texas, you know, first, you know, to identify if there's any, you know, alignment in the support that you are seeking based on their programs. Because as I mentioned earlier, all of, you know, our programs across the country have different programs. You know, we all support economic development and affordable housing, but the markets vary. And so like, I'm not familiar with all of what they're doing in Texas and the two offices, but I put my information in the chat. And so you can, you know, can facilitate a conversation.
Thank you so much.
Enterprise folks.
Double muted. Yes, I'll just jump in quickly to share that we do have we call it our Gulf Coast office, which includes Texas, and we can certainly connect with you here in New York and with folks down there and know enough about housing around the country. It's not a one-size-fits-all housing model and housing solution. It's really important to have that local expertise to understand what kind of housing programs might be available to support your mission and your vision. So happy to talk more offline about what you're seeking to do, how you're doing it, and how we can be helpful.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I'll speak for the partnership. If you want to give us a phone call, we can talk this through. Our process is one that you can use wherever you are in the country. We follow the same sort of basic protocol. It might be that if Enterprise or LISC is not, you know, programs doesn't comport with your needs, that, you know, we can sort of tailor, you know, the kinds of things that you would need to do, you know, to get into that position, locating a really good attorney who could help you evaluate this, and also an architect. And we can offer pointers to you on the, you know, the process that you can follow, you know, without necessarily having to affix yourself to a particular program or organization. which you might. It's just, where are you located?
So I'm in Killeen, Texas, which is Central Texas. We are right next to the Fort Hood base.
Next to a what? An Air Force base?
Fort Hood Army Base.
Oh, Fort Hood Army Base. Okay, great. Good. So, I mean, you can call any of us, but, just, I put my name in the chat and we can just, kind of help you feel your way.
Yes.
What makes sense. So,
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. I'm saying that we're just about over time. Sorry we ran out of time to take everyone's questions, but feel free to contact anyone that was on this panel today. Folks had put their numbers in and contact info in the chat, but like I said, we're all sending out the one-pagers. But like I think you heard from all of us, we're really just committed to helping folks who are interested in making affordable housing happen on their properties. And we're not in it for the money. We're in it for missional reasons, like you all are too. So it's making sure that you get the supports that you needed and the resources that you needed. So thank you so much again for coming today, and please be in touch as you need any resources or are looking to discern what you might be able to do with your properties. And we will be sending out that email with all the resources, including this recording, the PowerPoints, and the one-pagers from everyone here, in the next day or so. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Take care, everyone.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks, everybody.